Okay, here's this week's tale. Now, I thought with Valentine's Day coming up that this would be a pretty good story to share. First, I should tell you that I'm going to start classifying these stories. This story falls in the category of a Twain story, and I'll explain that. The American author Mark Twain once wrote, and this is a paraphrase, that when you tell people the truth, they almost never believe you. But when you lie to them, they almost always do. Because a lie has to make sense, and the truth rarely does. A simpler way to put that would be that truth is often stranger than fiction. So, with that in mind, this is I'm going to give you a little background before I tell you this week's actual tale proper. I have 4 sisters. 2 of them are half-sisters and a full sister. My 2 half-sisters lived out of state. On this one rare occasion, we were all in the same state. I believe we were there for the graduation ceremonies for one of my sisters and a number of my other relatives. So basically our whole family was in the state at the same time. And I'm sitting next to my youngest sister, and she looked over at her mother and she looked over at my mother, and she said to me, "You know, our moms are both pretty and smart. How did they end up hooking up with Dad?" And that got me to thinking about, how did they end up hooking up with Dad? So here's this week's tale. When my mother and father were both teenagers and they were just dating, my dad was, well, I should also point that I mentioned this in an earlier tale. My dad was a hoodlum, and by that I mean the 1950s sense of the word hoodlum, although to be accurate, juvenile delinquent fits better. Pretty sure if you pull up an encyclopedia from the 50s, there's a picture of my dad and his friends all under juvenile delinquent. Okay. My mom's being on a date with my dad. He drives her home. He pulls up to her house, and as he's about to let her out of the car, another car comes along and hits the car that's parked adjacent to my mother's house. It's actually her next door neighbor's car that's parked on the street. Someone hits the car and takes off. Well, my dad decides he's going to chase the car. So he starts to chase the car, and my mom's in the car, and they're essentially in a high-speed pursuit down a residential streets. And my dad's a mechanic. He knows all about cars. When he was younger, he used to actually race dragsters. So he knows how to drive a car. And they're chasing this car, and they can't get any lead on him. The guy's car is the equal to my dad's, so they can't really get any distance. They can't close the gap between them much. They're now been doing this long enough that they've actually started. They're not in a residential neighborhood. They're starting to get out into the country more, so there's more open, flat roads. Same thing. My dad can't get any speed on the guy, so the guy's basically eluding him. So my dad looks at my mom and says, "Hand me the gun out of the glove compartment," and she does it. She hands him the gun, and my dad's trying to shoot out the tires as they're in this high-speed pursuit, but he can't get a good aim on the guy because of the angle of trying to drive and try to point the gun at the same time. So my dad looks at my mom and says, "Take the wheel." And my mom does it. So my mom is steering the car, my dad's working the gas and the brakes with his feet, leaning out the window, shooting at the guy's car, trying to shoot his tires out. Now, they finally get to the point where they're out in basically the middle of nowhere, and the guy goes over a set of railroad tracks, and there happens to be a freight train coming the other way. Now my dad realized there was no way he was going to make it over the tracks before the train, because the guy they were following had only just made it. So he hit the brakes, they slid to a stop before they got to the tracks, and that was the end of the chase. No, that was it. They go drive back home. My mom gets dropped off, my dad goes home, and after I heard this story I looked at my mom and said, "And you married him?" And she said, "Yeah." So that just goes to show you that the heart wants what it wants. And that's this week's tale. Thanks, and remember, the world's a better place when we all share.